Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I am so excited for today's episode, and I think you are going to love it as much as I know I will, because I am joined by the Jessica Marx, who is one of my very favorite humans and founder of Tailored Premier. So let me tell you a little bit about Jessica, and then we are going to dive into some really great conversations about scaling while still providing tailored and really boutique high impact services. So Jessica has recently been named the top female coach by Yahoo Finance, and she is a powerhouse with over a decade of sales, executive leadership, and business experience. She's the founder of Tailored Premier, a premier business strategy firm where she pulls experience from being a corporate executive with experience of building 4 of her own businesses from the ground up. And she serves 6 to 7 figure founders who are ready to fast track their success and build sustainable businesses that can run without them. Jess, welcome to the show.
Hi, Krista. I'm excited to be here. We've been talking about doing this for a long time, and it's finally happening.
I know. And I'm excited to talk today because you are just such a great example of somebody who embodies everything that I believe is good business. Like, you have a really beautiful and elevated offer suite. You provide tailored and really wonderful services, yet you still have a really scalable business model and one that allows you to step away from your business when you need to, which recently you have needed to. So I want to dive in and talk a little bit about that today, but can you start with a little of your journey and how you got your business to where it is today?
Yes. So the very, very quick condensed version is in 2009. I joined a startup in the healthcare industry. Long story short, when I left in 2017 because I was pregnant with my twins, I was the only female executive. I was overseeing our entire national sales team of 500 plus sales reps, as well as our commercial and corporate strategy division, working alongside the CEO. The company had traded at an $8.5 billion valuation. We had gone through, obviously, in those 9 years, a lot of high highs and low lows. And because I was able to be a part of that experience, I was able to really see what goes into not only scaling a company past the $1 billion mark, but what are ways that you can take that and implement it into some of these smaller companies where we work with women in the 6 and 7 figure sector that may not have these large teams or be able to scale to that magnitude. So I always say, like, yes, there's glamour to saying, a multi-billion dollar company and overseeing sales and all of the things that all the huge wins we had, but it really was all of the challenges and the growth that comes alongside with, one, expanding into a company that has over 4,000 employees, but 2, just all of the different change and dynamics that come as you scale into new heights, new levels, and in the healthcare industry, which is one of the more difficult industries to be a part of. And so when I got pregnant with my twins, I had planned on taking some time off. It had been a journey of 100-hour work weeks and traveling all throughout the United States. And I really just wanted a break. To be honest, I had made my money. Like, I did not need to work. So I took some time off, and about 6 months in, called my husband crying and was like, I don't think this is for me. I need to jump back in. And that's when some consulting opportunities came along with the former CEO and president of the company, which then snowballed into more contracts, which ultimately led into building out the advisory firm where we positioned ourselves really nicely to work with female founded companies, mostly in the high sixes and multi seven figures, who are wanting to build their business to the next level without having to be more involved. So we're pulling the founders out so they're not having an owner dependent company where they have to be doing all the work in order to see the results. We also heavily focus on profitability versus revenue, which I call the participation trophy. And it's just been a really great experience. And I feel like we're only 5 years into this, but there's still so much left to be done and so many lives to change because we're going to see that this is the new way to be operating and running companies for the female sector.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And our backgrounds are so similar, right? I worked with the multi-billion-dollar businesses and helped them scale as well. And I see a distinct gap in what large companies do and what small businesses do. And yes, you're not going to apply things in the same way because your constraints are different. Your context is different. But there's a lot of things that larger businesses did that got them to the place that they're in today that I see small businesses not taking advantage of.
I agree. And it's decision after decision after decision. And there's a million ways to get to a million, but probably only one of them is going to be correct for you, your business model, what you're capable of. And I just think that if I always challenge people, if you look at these companies that have been successful, I mean, we all know the Sarah Blakeleys and the Spanx and things like that. None of these companies got there with one employee or alone or just a founder. I mean, it takes a team, it takes the right steps and decisions to get you there. And I just don't think a lot of founders are mindful of that from day one of starting their company. They're thinking too small, it's just going to be me. And so they're unable to grow or scale in a way that's going to best serve them and allow them the freedom that we all talk so much about.
Yeah, it's so true. And so, what are some of those things that you think are absolutely critical when you do want that scalable business that isn't completely dependent on you?
I think being really honest with yourself that there's other people that can do jobs a lot better than you can. And what are you truly good at? And how qualified are you to actually be a CEO? It's a conversation that most aren't having with themselves. So they're not able to identify where do they lack? What education don't they have? Should they be leaning on mentors, advisors, or bringing people into these roles so that they can do the thing that they're going to be best at and then train and replicate that so others are able to do it as well. I think a lot of people jump into entrepreneurship and then they get really busy doing oftentimes things that are busy but not productive. And they don't allow themselves to step back and see there's an entirely different way that I could do this that's much more efficient, much more profitable, and is actually going to give me the life, the freedom, the desire that I'm looking to have versus scrambling just to make $100,000 a year in revenue, which we know from a profit perspective leaves very little to the owner. And the stats are out there. Most people will fail at this, but I think a lot more people would win at it if they had more education on the front end. They're waiting way too long to get what they need to be a really solid leader, a solid founder, have a total understanding of business financials and how to scale from the start versus waiting until they've been trying something for 3 to 4 years to reach out and get that help.
The thing that I find is fascinating, I've been having so many conversations with people lately, and I love, first of all, that you focus on profitability over revenue because I think revenue can be so misleading. And when businesses go through periods of growth, a lot of times you can see significant increases in revenue, and you can actually see profitability decrease because it's not done in a really lean or simple or scalable way. And what is interesting in the conversations I've been having with people is so many people talking about the fact that they never really understood finances until they were in their business so many years that they wasted a ton of money. They either way over ended up paying in taxes because they didn't really understand how to even approach things from an accounting perspective, or they ended up mismanaging their money and not really understanding how to leverage the money that their business made to help them continue to grow. What do you see are some of those really big issues?
So I would say for starters, I think that people start companies without the right capital. And so they're constantly playing this game of catch up because they didn't start from a really healthy position. So when people ask my opinion that are corporate executives thinking about starting their own company or they have a really healthy salary, they make $300,000-400,000 a year as a W-2 employee, my biggest piece of advice is start banking as much as you can to bootstrap this company on your own or bring in the right investors that you're going to need to actually give it a starting point that is realistic and that's going to be able to get it up off the ground with the right team in place or the right infrastructure. And also, you don't want to be going from that type of salary to wondering how you're going to pay your bills every month. It's too hard of a jump. So then you go into panic mode and you're operating from a place that's just not healthy as a business owner. So I'd say that's step one from the start. Step two is that being a W 2 employee of a company where somebody else is paying the marketing team and they're paying all of the payroll and they're investing in all of these different areas to then becoming that person, you don't have the right education unless you have a financial background. And so you really need to understand, how do you read a P&L? What is a balance sheet? Do you get investors? Do you not get investors? If you do go that route, how are you planning on paying them back? What are the terms and conditions around that? It's not just paying somebody a $40,000 salary to work for you. It's all of the benefits and expenses and costs on top of that. And so I just think what happens is people are really passionate about what they do or their business idea, so they go after that idea that they have, and they're so focused on making that successful that they kind of let the financials fall to the wayside and they get themselves into an area where they are in trouble. They don't have a savings that they can sustain should there be a down month. They don't understand the actual cost of overhead for their company and how many contracts they need to bring in. And a perfect example of what you said, and we have this conversation all the time, especially with agency founders. Just because your agency is making 10 million a year doesn't mean that you as the owner are any more wealthier on your personal side because of that. Oftentimes we find that the overhead becomes so high as they scale that they become less profitable as an individual and are taking less of an owner's draw from the company. I'm really, really passionate about, if you are a business owner, you've taken this risk, you've made the investment. One, we want to get that investment paid back as soon as possible. But two, this should be contributing to your financial wealth portfolio. You should understand tax strategy. You should understand how you get yourself paid and that you're not working tirelessly, endlessly, every single week, every single month to then not even be able to give yourself a paycheck.
It's true, and I see it so often, and I think the thing that I see a lot is I see this so often from business owners who've been in business a long time, and from the outside looking in, they look like they have this wildly successful business, and I think sometimes they're almost embarrassed to even talk about their financials, or they don't want to because they feel like they should have this figured out by now, but because they didn't start there, they almost don't know where to start today to course correct and really gain that understanding.
Yes. And it's much harder from somebody that, and I think you'll agree with this, that comes in and advises these types of companies. It is much more difficult for me to unwind, undo, untangle 20 years worth of bad habits, 10 years worth of bad habits, bad spending, bad decisions, whatever it was, bad investments, than it is for me to sit down with somebody that says, look, I'm 2 years in. We've already been able to get it to 400,000. We know if we want to get it to a million, like we've got to start making the right decisions. I can make those transitions a lot quicker than somebody that has to unpack all the years of poor decisions or uneducated around their financials.
Yeah, and it just makes me think there's a client that I've worked with in the past who we would joke that you ever read those cautionary tales in business and it's this fake company that that they talk about and they paint this scenario that's just so bad that as you're reading it you're like, "Okay, I get it. No business would ever actually do this, but I get the story." And we would joke that her business was that tale. And for her, it was more from a complexity perspective, where she had a lot of those financial constraints as well. It expanded into all of her systems. And the fact that there was so much complexity and manual things where there are things that could have been automated. And to your point, had that been built day one forward, or even, right early on into the business forward, would have been a lot easier to catch and handle than trying to go back and untangling 10 years worth of incredible complexity that's dependent on certain people and that's not really documented well and that stitches together with this obsolete tool and system. And so it really is, I feel like people can just do themselves such a favor by thinking about scalability and thinking about simplicity and thinking about success earlier on instead of in more of a looking back reactive mode. What do you see, yeah, with that?
Oh, the simplification of business is one of the most misunderstood values of being a business owner. And I will say, like, I always laugh that I started my sales career out of college, like with the phone book. I mean, we were literally calling out of the phone book. And it was even this new wild west to me when I started this company. And it was like everybody was saying, you have to have this funnel and this tripwire, and then you got to send them down this rabbit hole, and you have to do live launch, and you have to do a 5 day challenge. You have to, and I'm like, I'm not doing any of that. No way, no how. I'm not running ads. I'm not like, there's something to be said about keeping it, to be honest, like old school, and building relationships and expanding your network and delivering really good results and pouring out the educational content that's needed. And so I just think that all of these business owners have been trying to piece it together for these last few years off what they're seeing on Instagram and the internet and Google and the YouTube videos. And now it's just overly complicated.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the experience that you provide for your clients. Because one of the things that I really love, and something that I know a lot of business owners struggle with, is if they do something that's very boutique, very high touch, it feels very tailored for somebody, they feel like they must do everything one on one, and they struggle with trying to find a way to actually scale that. Now, the way that you've structured your company is scalable, yet you do have tailored experiences for people. So, can you talk a little bit about that sweet spot? Because I think that's really hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around how they can do that.
Yes. So I think you need to really be clear. And some of this comes with the evolution of your business. And it's part of the reason why I think 5 year plans are kind of BS, because 5 years ago, pre COVID, like we would have never said the world's going to shut down, all the things are going to happen, markets are going to shift, real estate's going to like go off the charts. So it's very hard to gauge what's going to happen in the next 5 years. But what I would more so challenge to do is like, what's happened in the last 5 years? And what did that look like for your company? Were you satisfied? Were you unsatisfied? Like, where do you want to take it from there? And so, with me making the transition of a consultant into more of our advisory firm, a lot of it came from working with our clients and seeing who else were they hiring for, and why wouldn't I bring that in on my team and have everything encompassed all in one? And knowing what type of advisors and leadership development that they would need as they went through our programs. I also made a decision very early on, which was risky at the time in 2019, 2020. We saw all of these other coaches, you could call them, in the space, like doing mass programs, like hundreds of people in a group program, and all of these courses and digital downloads. And it would have been very easy to play a game of follow the leader at that time, and I knew in no way was that the type of company I wanted to build. That went against everything that I really believed in. And that for me to give somebody advice on their business and have radical transformation and growth, like I needed to be in the weeds. I needed to know the information. This couldn't be surface level. Like I needed to have a 360-degree view. And that's why our clients see six-figure results, is because if I didn't have that information, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so by positioning ourselves as a boutique firm where we only take a select amount of clients per year at a certain price point, it has allowed me to do the front end work, bring on clients, really do the deep work, create the strategy, create the plan. But then we have other advisors that are all multi-million dollar business owners that said, absolutely, I will work for you and advise your clients while they still own their other companies, and then come in and put them through like the leadership and team development, the peak performance and mindset advisory sections. So it's not all me all the time. I'm also not qualified to talk on peak performance and mindset. I haven't gone through all of the degrees and education that she has to uncover trauma and why that holds you back in business and things like that. So for me to try to take that on as an owner and do it all, we would not be able to then have the clients that we do and get the results that we deliver.
Yeah, I love that model a lot. And I've moved more towards that over the years as well. Where, I mean, I've been in business for 30 something years. I know pretty much everything. And I'm saying everything for those of you who are just listening, very much in air quotes, there is to know about business in a lot of ways, from a situational ask me a question, but I'm not an expert on everything because nobody is. We all have our areas that we are experts in. And being that I've been in business for so long, I always almost felt like I had to be an expert at all the things. And when I accepted that, no, I don't need to be, I can go deep in the areas that I'm super passionate about and that I just naturally am more aligned with my zone of genius. And I can surround myself with other people who can do the same things that I can do. Like I can do it, but they can do it better. Or they have a level of expertise and depth that I will never have. Like your background in sales, that's not one of my strengths at all. So when I brought advisors into my team, I made sure I brought somebody in who can do sales because I didn't feel like I was helping my clients the best if I was trying to advise them on something that isn't my natural strength and zone of genius. And do you find, because I see where people have that same, they have to be the expert at everything, but they are the only one trying to be the expert at everything. Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, we see some of these companies market themselves that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think a lot of business owners haven't really figured out where's the market going to pay them the most. It's not going to be a jack of all trades. No way. I mean, nobody wants this one person that can do a lot or a little of a lot. They'd rather know, like, I'm coming and I'm hiring this person because they are absolutely an expert in this space. And so getting really clear on what you do, but where do your clients see the best results in working with you? And that goes for whatever industry that you're in, and then honing in on that. Because by offering 20 different services, you're not only doing yourself a disservice, but your clients as well, because they're walking away not getting the ultimate result if you would have just delivered on that one thing.
I agree completely. And I think that takes us kind of full circle back to simplicity, right? What do you do really, really well? Who do you do it for really, really well? And how can you have a simple business model that supports you, that's scalable?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, you see, I call it like insta famous, like all of these companies just really, especially like in the startup phase, just trying to look like they have it all together on Instagram and they can do anything you need them to, and they can overhaul your marketing, and then they could be your VA. And then I mean, it's like all of these things, but nothing's working really well behind the scenes for them. And it just creates so much stress. And that's when you get in that cycle that you just cannot get out of it, because there's so much relying on you. And there's so many tasks day to day that have to be transitioned from one to the other that nothing's getting completed.
Yeah, I agree completely. And one of the things that I do want to talk about is that support, right? As we're building out our teams, as we're scaling, you can bring people in, obviously, as an agency. You can bring people in as an advisor. You can bring people in as an employee. You can bring people in as a freelancer, right? There's so many different ways that you can surround yourself with the support that you need. But what do you feel it really takes for the company to not be dependent on you when it comes to a team perspective?
You absolutely need an operations person, whatever that role looks like within your organization. Somebody that is, because as CEOs, we're oftentimes the visionary. We're very strategic as far as like higher level, but it stops there. So for me, I could think of like, we could do this really great event and I want it to be in Austin, and these are the dates, and here's who I'm seeing coming. I don't want to have to go figure out the venue. I don't want to have to think about, are there food allergies, or how are we getting everybody there? What are the logistics behind it? And so I think that a lot of companies, even in like the $500,000 to $1 million sector, they're hiring these junior level administrative team members that are not operationally focused. So they're not looking at, how can we do this in within budget and within scope, and what can we do to set up the system so it's automated and everybody's going online and registering, and then they're getting their travel packets or whatever it looks like, and then they're getting the follow-up email so we can see how we did and get testimonials. If you don't have that person that's operationally like that thinker, and then that implementer and that doer, it's very hard to get out of the weeds, because none of that's going to get done without your involvement. A junior level person just isn't going to think of all the details that go into that. So I would say, number one, an operational person. Number two is the systems. And I was just giving this example yesterday that my head of operations has been in Europe the last 2.5 weeks. And I didn't even really notice she was gone. I mean, our systems work so well. Payments ran on time, contracts were still sent, everybody had email reminders going out about their call. I mean, she set up the infrastructure, so we're also not totally reliant on her being in the office for this to function. And vice versa. If I'm out of the office, everything should be able, she should be able to handle it without me there. And so I think that you get what you pay for, especially when it comes to team. And a lot of people try to save money or take the cheaper option. And ultimately, what that does is it just sucks you into the company further, because you're fixing mistakes. You're doing it all. You're trying to teach this person to be somebody that they don't have the skill set for. And you get on this like hamster wheel of never being able to then have that trajectory that you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree fully. And I call the ops person the soul, the strategy and operations lead, that person who can really truly take the vision that you have and look holistically across that business at all the bits and pieces and how it needs to come together, and then make sure that it gets done and all the details are in place and all the systems are in place from a oversight perspective. And I think when you have the right people in the right systems, as you shared, that does allow you to step out of the day to day. But without that, I don't see a path where that's really possible, because there's just too much that's dependent on you, sometimes for the doing, if you don't have the right team surround you, but at least for the decisioning, even if you have other people who are doing things. All right, so there's a question I ask everybody, and I'm so curious to hear what you have to say for this one. And that is, how do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean in your business?
I am definitely in a season of life. I have 5-year-old twins. I own this advisory firm. My husband and I also own a very successful construction company, and he's a San Diego City firefighter. So I am like having to work smart every second and every minute of my life. And one is I delegate everything in my personal life, in my business life. And if I'm not the best person to be doing it, I don't do it. And because I'm able to generate enough profitable revenue in what I do really well, then I'm able to have the right team to be able to do it and only focus on the things that I really enjoy. The other thing that I really, when I think of like working smarter, is we are working always 3 to 6 months in advance, always, because I am a mom of little kids. And I recently had an accident that had me out of work for a month, and it led right into our in person retreat 4 weeks after my accident. If I had just kind of put everything off and like, oh, right, the week before, I'll figure out all the content, I'll wing it all together, I mean, I would have been SOL. So, because even now we have a retreat in Austin in October, I'm pretty much almost wrapping everything up for that. So, if anything happens between now and then, or life or whatever, I'm good to go. And I just think that too many business owners work in a reactive state instead of being highly proactive. And yes, we may have to change or shift things over the next few months, given maybe something happens within markets or whatnot, but it's just easy little shifts. For the most part, everything's there. And so I would say by taking the time to really focus on 3 to 6 months ahead, it allows me to live my day to day life knowing things are handled. I don't need to put out fires. I don't need to create an email campaign to go out for this week because there's nothing scheduled. It just is what it is. And we've already done it.
I love that so much. That's so brilliant. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, just you have the business model that I feel like is the business model that so many businesses would love to have, but are not quite sure how to get to. And so, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
Yes. So our website is tailoredpremier.com. On Instagram, I'm at the Jessica Marx. And basically, what our methodology is we come in and I do a full 360-degree business performance assessment. It's anywhere from 15 to 20 pages long. By the time our clients are done, they have to hand over all of their P&Ls, financial statements, you name it, because what we build out for one company versus what we might do for somebody that's in the same exact industry, same type of company, is going to be completely different. And so we have a customizable approach. There is no like magic blueprint out there. And I think that's where a lot of people have been misled, is that there's like this magic, key to success or recipe that some of these people have found out and others haven't. And that's absolutely just not the case. It's having somebody come in, if you're not able to do it yourself, and really look at where the business is at, where you want to take it, what are your personal goals, because we always want to build the business around your personal life, not your personal life around the business, and then really put together a plan in place that you will actually be able to execute on.
Yeah, I love it. I love the whole model. I encourage all of you listening to be sure to check out Jessica and her work. And I have to say, your team does such a brilliant job with your social media as well. I have major FOMO every time I see your beautiful behind the scenes of your retreats. So, really, really, really well done. Thank you for modeling the way, showing other businesses what is possible, and just for the incredible way that you support businesses to focus on what actually matters instead of a lot of the vanity stuff that feels good in the moment but doesn't actually give those lasting sustainable results. So, Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show. Any final thoughts that you want to share with the listeners about how to scale in a way that really fits them and that allows them to keep things more tailored and really do what they're most passionate about?
Yeah, trust your gut. Do what feels right. Do what feels good. At the end of the day, you started your business to be the boss, to be the owner, to be the decision maker. And don't lose sight of that as things start to grow or become challenging or complicated. You are still in charge. You're in the driver's seat, and realize that. And if you don't know what you don't know, find out. Find somebody who does. Lean on your networks, go to entrepreneurship conferences or networking events where you can expand your circle of women or other individuals that you can text, vox, or pick up the phone and say, hey, I don't fully understand how to do this, can you explain it to me? Because that can be a game changer.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you all got as much value out of this episode as I did. I will see you again next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.